Meeting for community transit on September 2nd, 2021. This meeting is being held in accordance with the governor's, is being recorded and held in regard with Proclamation 2028 of the governor's stay-at-home order. The meeting is held remotely. Meeting is audio and video recorded. And will the clerk please call the roll?
Councilmember Kim Daughtry.
I'm here, thank you.
Councilmember Joe Marine.
I'm here.
Councilmember Jared Mead. Absent. Councilmember Tom Merrill.
I'm here.
Councilmember John Neary.
I'm here.
Labor Representative Lance Norton.
Here, thank you.
Councilmember Sid Roberts.
Here.
Councilmember Jan Schweddy.
Here.
Mayor Nicola Smith.
Here.
Councilmember Stephanie Wright. Absent. And I think I saw alternate Mayor Wright.
Here.
I believe we have a quorum.
Alternate Mike Gallagher is also present.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We do have a quorum. Okay, so the first thing we have today is we have 3 public meetings or public hearings. Public use and necessity resolution number 721. And that will be, I'm going to open the public hearing now, and we had no written comments for this hearing. And do we have anybody signed up to talk? Seeing none. Before we start the hearings, though, we're going to have June Duvall, Deputy Director of Planning and Development, will provide background and status of the condemnations. This is for the Swift Orange Line BRT project. June.
Good afternoon, board members. As mentioned by Board Chair Daughtry, we have 3 resolutions before you today to continue the work to finalize property acquisitions for the Swift Orange Line. You authorized the acquisition of property in October of 2020, and we have been negotiating with all property owners along the alignment. While we have settled almost all of the acquisitions needed for the Swift Orange Line, we have yet to settle these 3 remaining properties. The properties in question are all necessary to install Swift stations or to build appropriate speed and reliability improvements to support the Orange Line service, which will connect with Link Light Rail in 2024. Before you are resolutions to be considered that would, 1, find that the acquisition of real property for constructing a Swift BRT station was necessary for public use. 2, state that Community Transit and the owner of the property have been unable to agree on terms and value. And 3, authorize Community Transit's attorney to commence condemnation proceedings in Superior Court. I'd like to ask our attorney, Joe Bennett, to share some final thoughts.
Thank you, June, and good afternoon, board members. Joe Bennett from Hendricks Bennett. And I'm here very proud to say that June and our consultants at Contract Land Staff, who've been negotiating with the multiple property owners that have property that we need easement rights throughout this Orange Line, have done a fantastic job. Those of you who are on the board, roll back the clock 5-6 years ago will remember when we came before you on the Green Line, and we had 18 condemnations when we had this hearing. And today we only have 3. And I think that's, again, a testament to the hard work of June and the Contract Land Staff, but also shows that the Community Transit is being very realistic. We're doing competent and fair appraisals. We're making fair offers. And the remainder of the 3 properties that we have yet to agree on, I will say we've made substantial progress. We're just not there yet. And that's why we're coming before you today to get authorization to proceed with condemnation, not because this is the end of negotiations, but just that it's time now to get to the next phase of negotiations. It's the hope of staff that we will go out for contract in October, and construction will start the early part of 2022. So we really do need to tie up these properties. And again, I'm confident that even with an authorization of condemnation, we will continue. I assure you, we will continue to work with the property owners and their representatives to resolve this by mutual agreement. And if not, that's what our courts were invented for, just to resolve these disputes. But we do need to proceed with these three. It's time. And again, we come before you today with just three properties as opposed to the double digits we've done in both of the prior lines. So again, thanks to June and her staff. I'm happy to answer any questions about the process. If you have questions about the specific acquisitions, we would be happy to hear those questions. And depending on what the question is, I may recommend that we go into executive session, but maybe I'll just start with that. If there are any questions from the board members about the process or where we are or what happens next.
Kim, can I ask a question?
Yes, go ahead, Jan.
I'm just kind of curious as to whether the issue is money they want more, or is it what land that it's going to take?
That's a great question. The land, I mean, we've defined the areas that we need a permanent easement for our stations, and sometimes larger areas for temporary construction easements, so we can either stage or construct. And frankly, the dispute at this stage is not about money. We have made offers and we've received verbal assurances from the property owners that they think the number is fair. They're not really trading numbers with us. They would just like to see some additional terms in the contract that we're proposing. And we have made, I will say that one of the reasons we're down to three is that we have really made a lot of accommodations and bent over backwards to meet the property owners more than halfway. And the three remaining, they're asking for contract terms that we just can't agree to, and I can't recommend that that Community Transit agrees to. So it's a very narrow issue, and my hope and expectation is that once we file for condemnation, these matters will quickly resolve, because taking a case to condemnation costs money on both sides, and if we're not arguing about dollars, I think some of the contract terms that they would like to see, I think they'll realize that they can live without those.
Okay, thank you.
Joe, this is Lance Norton, Labor Representative. I have 1 or 2 questions.
Of course. Hi, Lance.
Joe, I'm just curious if it's not money. For example, a few of the additional terms the owners require, and also if you can, the size of the properties involved with these three resolutions.
Well, I'll defer to June on the size of the properties. In terms of the contract terms, Mr. Norton, I'll say they fall into some categories. One of them is they want Community Transit to indemnify them from now until the end of time for anything that may happen on these stations. One of the issues that I've had to deal with is requests that we agree to indemnify and hold harmless and defend them in a lawsuit, except if they engaged in intentional acts or gross negligence. And we can't agree to that, because most lawsuits revolve around not intentional acts or gross negligence, which is kind of extreme, but just ordinary negligence, people making mistakes. And I cannot recommend, and I cannot ask Community Transit to agree to signing up for a property owner's negligence. We don't do that. And if we proceed to court and get a court order, which will require us to pay just compensation in exchange for these easements, the court won't require any indemnity provisions at all. It's just a bare bones lease easement in exchange for just compensation. That's all it is. So again, I'm hopeful that once they realize that we now have no choice time-wise but to proceed to condemnation, or at least file them, that they'll realize that it's really not in their interest to fight this any longer. But June, can you talk about the size, the size range of these easement areas?
Certainly. In most cases, what we are taking is a strip of what is currently landscaping. In no cases are we taking people's buildings or their entire properties. So for the three specifics, I'd have to look them up, but generally they're strips of landscaping. At most, our stations are 60 by 10 by 60. So that would be about the biggest size that we're taking, but in most of these, they're much smaller than that. And they're located in what is currently existing landscaping.
Thank you, June. And Joe, thank you, June. One last question, Joe.
Sure.
Have they been informed about, how far this can go and how they most likely would end up? I mean, as you explained briefly about that.
Yeah, right.
Okay.
We've notified all the property owners in writing. They were notified of today's hearing that this is a precursor and a necessary step before we proceed to condemnation. And I'll just let the board know, and including you, Mr. Norton, that one of the first things I will do, especially those that are represented by attorneys, is reach out to them and maybe just pick up the phone and explain really the facts of life, that if we're not arguing about dollars, then this doesn't really make sense for anybody. So if there's some terms in the contract that you'd like to see, our last proposal on the contract is definitely the best you're going to get. And if you proceed to trial, we're both going to wind up spending money to wind up with an agreement that gives these property owners less protection. So yes, I will definitely, before we go very far down the litigation route, is reach out and contact whoever the decision maker is or their attorney to hopefully convince them that now is the time to resolve this.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Bennett. Is there any other questions for either June Duvall or Joe Bennett? I just want to take a second to iterate to some of the people that are out in our attendees area that the people that we're going to ask to speak for public hearing are also going to have their time during regular public comment at the end of these hearings. So if you're waiting for public comment not on these three resolutions, and you will get your chance coming up after we're done with the public hearings. All right, seeing none, I'm going to open up public hearing to consider resolution number 7-21 related to the property owned by Linwood Tower LLC. Is there anybody that wants to comment in the public about this particular resolution? I can no longer see the hands up, so I'm relying on Juanita to watch for that. Do we have anybody, Juanita?
Not at this time.
Well, on my
Thank you.
screen, I see Mr. James Deal has
Yeah,
had.
He will-
he's going to be doing a regular public comment.
Oh, okay, good, thanks.
Okay. Seeing none, we'll close the public comments. There was no written comments received. Close the public hearing, resolution 721 related to property owned by Linwood Tower LLC. Are there any discussions about this resolution from the board? Seeing none, I would entertain a vote or a motion.
Okay, I move to approve resolution number 07-21, authorizing the commencement of condemnation proceedings.
Thank you,
Second.
Jan. Sid Roberts is a second. Thank you, Mr. Roberts.
You're welcome.
Any comments, discussion about the motion? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Say nay. Any abstentions? Seeing none, the motion passes unanimously. Thank you. See, the next one is resolution 821 related to property owned by Critchlow Homes Incorporated. There were no written comments received. I will call again for any public comments on this resolution 821 related to property owned by Critchlow Homes Incorporated. Any public comments? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing for resolution number 821 related to property owned by Critchlow Homes. Is there any discussion by the board?
Chair, I move that we approve resolution number 0821 authorizing the commencement of condemnation proceedings.
Thank you, Councilmember Marine. Do I have a second?
Second.
And a second by Councilmember Merrill. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Passed unanimously, thank you. Next, we will move on to the open public hearing to consider resolution 921 related to property owned by BV Linwood LLC. Are there any in the public that would like to comment on resolution 921? Seeing none, I'll close the public comment portion of the hearing and call for a motion on the resolution by the board.
Chair, I move that the Board of Directors approve resolution number 09-21 authorizing commencement of condemnation proceedings on the subject property.
Thank you,
Second.
Councilmember Roberts. And who was the second?
Well, I second it, and I think
Okay,
somebody else
we'll
did
let-
too.
Councilmember Schweddy was second. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Passed unanimously. Thank you very much. And that is the end of public hearings. Next, we'll move on to public comments. We have one written, actually, I think we have now one written public comment received by Mr. Joe Kunzler, was sent to the board earlier today. We have 3 people signed up to speak. Mr. Joe Kunzler will be first. Please bring Mr. Kunzler in and we'll give you your 3 minutes, Mr. Kunzler.
Hello, can everyone hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, sir.
Thank you. Can you please, I appreciate the board having your cameras on and, all of that, so I can give you some quick public comment. I hope you read my public comment because I don't want to waste your time with things that aren't on the agenda or essential to transit. I'm very happy with what community transit is doing on COVID-19. And so I don't want to harp on that today. I do want to stress the importance of passing the transit development plan. I am very grateful for the final document, that the final document will incorporate comments from jurisdictions like Mukilteo and Everett Transit, and also my comments. The document is reflective of the public input that was given, and that is very much appreciated by me, just as I appreciate all the hard work that community transit staff have done to facilitate online meetings. It is very, very much appreciated. And I want to leave it at that because I don't want to start naming staff and having people panic. But moving forward, I do want to stress on this call as well. I saw your outreach plan on the presentation today. I really hope there's an effort to get more participants than middle-aged white men like me, but hopefully people of different races and backgrounds and educations before you and before community transit staff, so we have a network that better reflects the community. And I appreciate all efforts to that end. It's important to me that we have public input and that we have a community transit be responsive to the community. And I appreciate CEO Ellen Fritz and staff leadership on this. Finally, I want to specifically thank board member Lance Norton for his continued leadership on the board. He made some very good comments last month about my comments, and he's continued to sort of be the conscience of this board, and it is very much appreciated by yours truly. And with that, I cede the microphone. Thank you again, everyone.
I am muted. Thank you, Mr. Kunzler. Appreciate your comments. Next up is Sherry Londecker Daly. Do we have Sherry or do we lose Sherry?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now, Sherry. Thank you. You have your 3 minutes. Thank you.
Okay, great. I would like to add to my June presentation to the board. September is National Suicide Prevention Month. In June, I approached the board on an emotional level about supporting change to work hours worked, support and prevent employee burnout. This time, I'm here to bring data and statistics to back up what was presented in June. In September 2020, Forbes magazine article, it states every 40 seconds, someone dies from suicide. A stress study supports work stress, such as long hours and job strain, as a leading cause of suicide amongst working Americans between the ages of 45 and 64, which are most of us. The CDC states that suicide rates are at its highest since World War II and due in large part to stress and addiction. Here at Community Transit, we have seen a proven uptick in both. Workplace stress is believed to be the leading factor in suicide when employees have little to no control over high demand jobs. A Stress Pulse survey stated excessive workload is 46% in interpersonal issues and 28% of the leading sources of workplace stress. In an American Stress Institute report of 2001, 26 of employees are on the verge of job stress burnout. At first, I felt this was a pretty old study to use in 2021. However, 9/11 happened in 2001. Is this the same as COVID? No. However, the nation's personal life stresses are pretty equal. With the information, let's look at community transit. There are 460 pieces of work for October in transportation to cover a week. 288 on a weekday, 126 on a Saturday, and 106 on a Sunday. 88 combos on a weekday with an average of a 3-hour, 31-minute spread time. This does not seem unreasonable in public transit, though in reality, 50% are 4 or more hours spread time, 11 are greater than 5 hours spread time. Add this to an already 8 to 9 hour run card, and this makes a 12 to 14 hour workday. Now add a reasonably assumed 45-minute commute one way. Now that's 13.5 to 15.5 hour workday. The CDC recommends an adult needing at least 7 hours or more of sleep nightly. Now that's a total of 20.5 to 22.5 hours per day, leaving as little as 1.5 hours to 3.5 hours a day to spend with family or personal care. Yet we still have the question of why we have burnout. Our dial-a-ride operators have reported they only have 1 day off to recover a 10-hour mandated workdays. Operators here are getting 1 true day to enjoy life and relax from a demanding job requiring safety as the utmost. If we apply the American Stress Institute 26% burnout study to our 386 full-time coach operators, it would produce 15% burnout amongst those that are expected to have safety service schedule at the utmost importance. Every day they report to work. If we collaboratively work together on operator burnout, I believe we could reduce our absenteeism in transportation from 20% in June this year to 5 to 10%. Likewise, L&I in 2020 cost $1,341,026, and absenteeism was $974,795. If both of these were in part to this 15% burnout, we could save $347,373.15. If June's incidence reports were due to the 15% burnout, we could reduce incidents by more than half and bring that down to 11.5%. I am here to tell you this burnout is real, and not just in transportation. I have seen exhaustion throughout our company. While I am voicing data more closely to coach operators, the loss of any life due to any part of job burnout is preventable and would be very upsetting, no matter which part of the agency they are taken to. Together, let's fix this one task at a time. Again, we have been talking about this for 13 years, and I have been involved with the agency. We need to make mental health and job burnout prevention here a priority. I was pleased to hear that the recording of Ask Rick from yesterday, that there is true talk of 410s. While I understand change of this measure takes time, provide feedback regularly on a progress of the burnout prevention. I would also be very interested in a complete anonymous survey of job stress or job burnout for the entire company. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Daly. Next up is, I lost my place. I'll find it. Mr. James Deal. Did Mr. Deal make it across?
Hello, this is James Deal. Can you hear me?
Yes, Mr. Deal, you have 3 minutes. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. I'm calling about the Linwood test pilot that's coming up in 2022. I sent all of you my article about door-to-door transit. I think I probably sent it to you before. And about the pilot program, let me just say that the biggest harvest of riders to the pilot program would be people going from their homes to the park and ride. That's one category. And the way to induce them to use the pilot program or the vans that I propose that be set up is that you charge $10 a day to park at the park and rides. It makes absolutely no sense that it's free to park at the park and ride, when once they get down to Seattle, they're going to pay $15 or $20 a day to park downtown. You're giving away valuable services for free. So mass transit is never going to fully succeed unless we get people to the mass transit. And if Uber can do it, then a van program operated by community transit or sound transit would succeed too. And the way to control the cost is to use vans instead of independent automobiles, and to charge people $2 a ride and $1 a mile, and pick them up where they are and take them to their destination. Now I see so many buses that are rolling around, mostly empty most of the time. And there are so many people who are too old to drive. They're too young to get a driver's license. They're children who need to be taken to the piano lessons. And so mom or dad has to ferry them around. Then there are kids going to high school. We could completely eliminate the school bus system, have one bus system with vans of all different sizes. People can call on their cell phone and get a ride from wherever they are to wherever they need to go. The current strategy is to draw lines on a map and then try to have buses running along those lines for 18 hours a day. $150 an hour is the cost to run a bus, not including the capital cost of the bus. So this is such a huge waste, and Sound Transit's out of money. We're always needing more money for community transit, and we pay our sales tax money to support community transit. So what we should do is do what Uber is doing in San Francisco, which is picking people up at their homes and taking them to the BART. That's going to be your first source of riders using this pilot service. And the other source is people going to local destinations. Can you imagine how difficult it would be to shop for groceries and then carry them home by bus? With 2 big bags, 3 big bags of groceries, you're going to have to take a hike from the QFC to the nearest bus stop and then wait for a bus to come along. Now, I do support the regular bus lines, but I believe that the door-to-door transit vans could feed passengers to all these Swift bus lines that we're setting up. As it is, they have to take a hike from their home down to the bus line, and then they have to know what time the bus is passing by. And then if they have to make a transfer, they have to figure out what time the transfer can be made. So a much more client-centered approach would be just come pick the people up and take them to the nearest Swift line or to the park and ride so that people can use the system. It's not a friendly system. And the reason
Mr.
that
Deal, your time's just about up.
we have this system because we all started with trains, and trains cannot vary from a route, but vans can. So I look forward to hearing about your progress on this important subject.
Thank you, Mr. Deal.
Thank you.
Appreciate your comments and appreciate you coming to our meetings. All right, next up is the presentations. We have some employee service awards by CEO Liquor Fritz.
Good afternoon, members of the board. Excited to be here today for an employee recognition. Today we have Jack Harris, and I want to pause and see if Jack is with us today. It's always nice to put our honoree on the spot. He may not be here today.
Yeah, he's here. He's here.
There he is. Welcome, Jack. Jack is a journeyman mechanic, and Jack is celebrating today his 20th anniversary, 20 years of service to community transit. He has served honorably as a journey mechanic for that entire 20-year period. And during that time, he has been integrally involved in multiple different system upgrades in our fleet, including installation of high-profile systems like Orca at its inception, our APTS system, which is our transit data collection system. Most recently, he was involved in the voice over internet wireless communication project that replaced our land mobile radio system. These are all highly technical and sophisticated systems that require a high degree of knowledge, experience, and care. And that, if you talk to anybody, is what Jack brings to his work in abundance. His coworkers describe him as quiet, friendly person who's nice. I would note there's a need for more niceness in society these days. So I commend Jack for that and appreciate what he brings to the table. He's consistent, diligent, constantly produces quality work. And I would note to board members in particular, he is known to always have licorice in his toolbox. So if you're wandering around the shop and you need a sugar fix, Jack is the guy to see. So Jack, I want to congratulate you on 20 years of community transit. Thank you for your service to the organization and to the community and all the work you do to help keep our vehicles out there on the road and safe. And ask the board members and our attendees to join me in wishing Jack a hearty congratulations on this milestone.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jack. Well done.
Thanks.
Thank you, Jack.
All right, moving on, Northgate Bus Light Rail Integration, Communications and Marketing, Luke Disselhorst.
Thank you, and good afternoon, Chair and board members. My name is Luke Distelhorst. I use he, him pronouns, and I work in the Communications and Public Affairs Department. Today, I'll be giving a really brief update on our outreach, communications, and marketing work around bus light rail integration at Northgate Station, which opens 1 month from today. So I hope you all have your ORCA cards ready. And one of the key elements that I want to stress about kind of all of this work is that we've had really strong interagency collaboration with Sound Transit and King County Metro. So you'll hear me reference that a few times as we've really been partnering with them throughout, especially the last few months. So along with Sound Transit, we started this process with our customers 2 years ago through public engagement opportunities to learn how we could best make this first connection to light rail. Based on the feedback we received, the agency has designed service to match the values and priorities that we heard from our riders. So what that looks like when it comes to the implementation in 4 weeks is that our 400 series buses and Sound Transit Route 510 will continue to provide service to downtown Seattle, and all of our 800 series buses and Sound Transit 511, 512, and 513 will connect to the one line at Northgate, which is the new name for this north-south line of Link Light Rail. Starting in early August, we kicked off the first real stage of this outreach and communications work to begin reminding current riders of the upcoming changes and getting messages around the new connection out to the general public. That has been intensifying over the last few weeks, which I will speak about in a few slides. And we're starting to now bring in the marketing aspects, which will extend beyond our current riders and those already connected to our service. Overall, it's really a couplet of informing and assisting our current riders, while we also expand our reach out to lapsed or prospective riders to attract them to our services as we get closer to launch and when we're in service post October 2nd. Speaking to those different audiences, the restructuring really changes the landscape for what routes people may be taking. You'll see a few of the key rider audiences we're currently focusing on here. In the past, our 800 routes especially served a very specific set of riders. And now making this new connection that still serves the U District and University of Washington areas, but also Capitol Hill, downtown Seattle, and everywhere light rail goes, the actual route people take is becoming less important as we have more of this crossover service between our 800 series and Sound Transit 500 series connecting to light rail. We've also been working with the University of Washington Transportation Services, as well as our research and analytics department to get key data that is allowing us to do things like targeted geofencing. We've partnered with our commute trip reduction program to reach out to large employers in the region, as well as a new residential property incentives campaign, which has directly gotten us more audiences in multi-unit housing in Snohomish County. We started our outreach planning with Sound Transit and King County Metro early this year and have been coordinating the production and timing of service change information, in-person outreach, as well as the launch of data in tools like Trip Planner that our riders need to prepare for their new trip or new travel options created by this connection. Over the last few weeks, we've started in-person outreach at key transit facilities. Our service change rack card has been on all of our buses for about a month. We're producing a series of rider tip videos on social media. And after the trip planning data for all 3 agencies launches this week, we'll be hosting some online trip planning sessions in mid to late September to help people see what new connections are being made and what might work best for them. I also hope I'm not being too optimistic when I say this is all providing us with a lot of valuable experience that we hope to carry over to 2024, which is really not that far away, as you'll be hearing from Thomas Tumola in a few minutes. Similar to our direct rider outreach efforts, our media work started last spring when we announced the Northgate opening date and our matching fall service change date. As we've moved forward and closer to the date, we're highlighting that this is the first direct step in integrating with light rail before 2024. We will also be doing some personalized outreach to Snohomish County reporters to garner more local media coverage at the community level that may better reach our PTBA residents, and also contacting some local voices who are really active on social media and can help us increase our reach to audiences that may be outside of our traditional communication channels. It's been great to bring an integrated approach to this work with our marketing team, specifically Jennifer Jeter and Danielle Alcantara. We have an opportunity to use our marketing channels and paid media to complement the outreach and communications work. And we're using a wide range of tactics and advertising to help reach the audiences I outlined earlier. This really does open our services to a whole range of new trips that will be better served by light rail, including sporting events, social events, better connections to SeaTac Airport, better access to essential services in Seattle and King County, and so on. The marketing campaign just started last week and will continue through the end of 2021. So far, we've been getting a lot of good questions, and it demonstrates that our ads are effectively reaching people in our communities and have been getting a lot of good engagement. In some cases, we're getting questions that we didn't originally anticipate and have been turning those around into some of our rider tip videos that we're producing and will be putting out on social media. And just as a reminder, as you'll see 2 dates here, October 2nd is the opening of the 3 new light rail stations, and when Sound Transit and King County Metro will implement their fall service changes. We will implement our fall service change on Sunday, October 3rd, but Monday, October 4th is the first day that our 800 series buses, and then in joining the 512, the Sound Transit 511 and 513 will start their connection to light rail at Northgate. We've already planned to have our ambassadors out at the station for at least the first week and probably the first 2 weeks, working in conjunction with Sound Transit ambassadors. Given the time constraints of this short presentation, I haven't been able to cover all that we're doing, but I hope this has given you a high level of some of the work that we're doing to make sure that this real first stage of direct regional connections is focusing on our customers and the best travel experience possible for Snohomish County residents. And I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Do any other board members have any questions for Mr. Distelhorst? We could you just did too good of a job.
I'll take it. Thank you so much.
I do have one question. I understand on my calendar, I show something happening on October 1st also. Is that true? Are we doing something October 1st down there?
Sound Transit is, yeah, go ahead.
Mr. Chair, that's an event that Sound Transit is holding the day before the service opens to celebrate the completion of the project.
Oh, okay.
So as chair of our board, you've received an invitation to that event.
Okay, thank you. Somebody's got to keep me on track here.
I'll be there with you. So.
All right, maybe we should take transit down there. Okay, so thank you again, Luke, for your presentation. Kind of looking forward to this. October is going to be a really good month for us, I think. Next up is a baseline service level Title VI analysis in March 2022 service change from Mr. Tamola.
Can everyone hear me now?
Yes, sir, we can.
Excellent, thank you. Good afternoon, board members. I'm Thomas Tamola, Manager of Planning here at Community Transit. I'm going to talk to you about one item, which is really 2 items in one, a baseline service level Title VI hearing and public comment period that's coming up, and a little bit of a preview of the March 22 service change. I know the October service change is still a month away, but we're already in the initial preparation for the next one. So there's 2 objectives here today. One is to comply with FTA's requirements to formalize a new post-COVID baseline service level, and then 2, inform you on this preliminary March 22 service change. Bus service levels, as you may recall, were adjusted very frequently in calendar year 2020 following the pandemic emergency being declared. March 2020 through September 2020, there was a lot of service adjustments, a lot of hard work in the agency to adapt almost on a weekly basis. That really settled down about 6 months ago in September 2020, and we've been incrementally increasing service since that point, as you can see in the graphic. With FTA concurrence, we temporarily suspended our regular public process during that time period, and also Title VI program analysis. That's in alignment with all other agencies across the nation. We're at this point transitioning back to that regular process that everyone's familiar with. So as we emerge from the COVID emergency response, FTA requires us to formalize our new baseline service level. That's everything that we've done since that emergency response, since about September 2020 to date, and also looking forward to the some scenarios for March 2022 service. The steps to establish that new baseline service are: one, FTA sets this, as I mentioned, September 2020 as that new baseline pivot point or starting point. Attached in your packet today is a service equity analysis memos that looks at all the adjustments we've done since that point, and no disparate impacts were identified. The comment period for this will actually commence tomorrow and will culminate on October 7th back at this body with a public hearing. And that kind of segues into our March 22 service plan, which is very preliminary at this point. You heard a lot about the Northgate service plan coming online in a month. That's a big piece of it, obviously, but we're also looking at system ridership over the summer and throughout August. It's still in fluctuating with some modest growth, most recently on the commuter services to Seattle and University of Washington. The big picture here is that in the preparation of these scenarios, the draft budget and the DUP that's in front of you today for adoption envision about a 7,000 hour increase in service hours for March. That's a relatively small amount in our overall budget, probably 1 or 2%. So that being said, none of the scenarios that we could envision would prompt any major service evaluation. That increment's just relatively small, but we still plan an administrative process instead. So the key kind of components that would go into this, besides the budget piece I just mentioned, would be the restructuring of the 800 series routes around Northgate Station. There'll be a lot of cross-pollination between customers on those routes, Link Light Rail and the 400. So we'll be monitoring that very closely come October. And the big one here, obviously, is ongoing recovery from the COVID-19 pandemic. A lot of that influences what we're doing on a weekly basis. And this, basically all boils down to evolving assumptions for this upcoming service change package. So we're preparing for all possibilities and trying to be flexible and agile in implementation. We're watching data to determine the ultimate, estimated trajectory. We'll have at least a few weeks of very solid Northgate data available to make this March 22 service change. Everything has to be pretty much wrapped up by late October, early November. So we'll have, after the initial week of Northgate, at least a couple weeks of solid data. So there's two kind of facets of what this could look like. There's one for local service and one for commuter service. So for local service, it's really looking at a continuation of what we've done since last September, incremental restoration of service on local routes on weekdays. Like to remind everyone that we've never cut weekend service. It's just been weekday service that we've been adding trips to over the last year. And we've prepared several options that range from 500 to 7,000 hours. We've kind of zeroed in on a staff level on the Route 115, has the highest ranking based on equity and ridership data. It's the only core route not operating 7 days a week. And it's also more or less the future Orange Line corridor for Swift BRT. The final plan is dependent on all these emerging conditions and the commuter service. So one of my last slides here is the commuter service. Well, we're responding to a lot of changes in that market, obviously, looking at everything from something that's completely zero cost all the way up to 7,000 hours. We would have a couple options in front of us. One is to kind of follow the lead that other agencies, commuter bus, commuter rail, have done throughout the US in recent months, is really kind of shifting schedules around to accommodate trips that might want to take place outside the traditional peak. That could be done on a budget neutral basis. And also what we've done a local service, adding new trips back, which would require, new resources, of course. We would continue to monitor trips that have low boardings. We're not getting the return ridership. That would be something we would flag for future. And we respond to changes in all the Northgate related trends, that shifting around of the customer base I was highlighting earlier. So overall timeline for these two pieces, on the top line in the blue across the top there, you have the Title VI analysis. We have the public comment period starting tomorrow, culminating in the hearing on October 7th. Then we'll be back at the board here in early November, asking for approval and with the summary of comments. And then on the bottom there is really an active analysis period between now and like early fall. We'll be finalizing the service plans, monitoring the service, watching how Northgate goes, how people may shift around. And then we'll be back here in December with a recommended approach. And come late fall, we move immediately into implementation of that March service plan. And that is my presentation. Any questions?
Unmute, Kim. Does anybody have any questions for the presentation? Nope. Wow, hard group today. Well, thank you, Mr. Tamola. I appreciate it. I'd like to take a second to acknowledge some of the staff that try to keep me on track here. They give me this really cool piece of paper every month that is basically a script. And if I would follow the script, everything would run a little bit smoother. And what I'm talking about is I forgot to introduce Director Behe before Mr. Tamola. Would have had some comments more than likely to introduce him. And he tells me now that he doesn't have those comments. So I will say, sorry, I didn't follow the script and I'm going to try a little harder to do that. So now everybody knows that I'm not perfect. Darn. I was hoping to cover that up. So on the next one, I'm going to follow the script and introduce CEO Engelfritz because he's going to introduce the next presenter.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I think we can all agree it keeps things fresh to throw the script away once in a while. I don't want to spend too much time here. Thomas is going to step in again and deliver the next presentation. I want to observe, however, that it is a really important and intriguing presentation. I mean, all the information we bring forward to the board is important for your consideration, but this one in particular is something I noted when we introduced it to the Strategic Alignment Committee a couple of weeks ago, that it's beginning to articulate what our future will look like. We have been talking for a couple of years now about reimagining and shifting our transit network within Snohomish County around the expanding light rail network that Sound Transit's investing in. And when 2024 arrives, which I think we can all agree it will be here sooner than we can imagine, it's going to mean we have an opportunity to pull back the resources we've committed for years to serving the downtown market and reinvest them in a more robust network that's more locally focused within Snohomish County. So this presentation layers on top of the last two you heard, the opening of Northgate in a few weeks, the preparations for service change adjustments in March after that. And then this one is really looking at getting ready for the main event, which comes a couple of years later. So I commend it to your attention, and Thomas is gonna preview what this process will entail and what a revised network could look like, and the types of issues that we're going to look to engage our constituents with, and the kind of feedback we'll be looking for as we go forward. So this is going to play out over a couple of years, year and a half. So we've got some time, but it's a critical one for starting to define our future. So Thomas, take it away.
Sure. This is a unique opportunity with Link Light Rail arriving and allowing us to redesign our transit service and kind of address some, unprecedented, mobility opportunities. So how do we get here from here to there? Well, here we are today in late 2021. To date, a lot of this planning effort around this has been largely internal and has really kind of been structured around a couple series of internal workshops, getting a lot of initial input. We're at a critical milestone here today in early fall 2021, going into what we're calling phase 1 outreach and sharing service concepts with partner agencies over the next month. We will also be seeking early input from the public later this fall, starting around mid-late October through the Thanksgiving holiday season. And 2022, as you can see on this graphic, is really the really big year of extensive public input and network development following this fall's early input. The final decision point for approval is targeted for December 2022. So like all large projects like this, you go into it with a few clearly articulated goals. We have 4 total. First and most familiar would be connecting to connecting the bus to light rail. Other goals include expanding access to frequent service, adjusting the changing markets, and ensuring equitable access to transit. And this kind of permeates throughout our analysis work and outreach. This is underpinned by travel made easy for all. So how did we get here? Well, this major service planning effort has a lot of moving parts and a lot of inputs from key regional plans, as well as internal and external input. We're using a lot of data-driven decisions and modern analytics, such as mobile phone data that's been anonymized and onboard bus data from APTS, geographic information systems like ArcMap, and tools like Tableau, which is a local company here in the Seattle area. And most importantly, we want to align our analysis and collaboration to best practices in the industry. And a lot of other folks have gone down this path recently. Most notably, Los Angeles MTA with their next network plan, and a lot of the work that's ongoing in King County Metro with their equity index tool. So the graphic in front of you kind of looks like a food pyramid of transit vehicles, and this represents the various transit modes within the purview of our 2024 network planning. High capacity transit, or light rail and BRT, is the foundation, the backbone of the network that has high frequency capacity and reliability. Local and express routes probably look most familiar and commingle with traffic on local streets and state highways. New service options is more flexible but lower capacity and typically focused in local neighborhood or specific city zones. So I think that the marquee piece of this effort is probably expanding frequent service on the fixed bus network, and a big component of that is Swift. The network restructure with light rail allows for a major upgrade for current and future customers. Thousands of commuter bus service hours, that's buses stuck in traffic on I-5 or Seattle city streets, can be reinvested in frequent service within Snohomish County. Swift is a major component of this, as I stated earlier, but you can see that in all the blue, green, and orange lines there on the map. In alignment with their 2011 long-range plan, the gray lines are other transit emphasis corridors or major state or county highways where other frequent local service can be deployed. So this first graphic shows the service concept for the future frequent network. This is similar to like an airline network map and shows key connections and network hubs where multiple routes converge. Link Light Rail is the spine there down the middle, and the blue circles are the hubs for integrated bus and light rail network. And by frequent network, that's defined as 15-minute or better service all day long. Restructured express routes is shown on this next slide. This is basically services that operate primarily today during the peak, but we're transforming that a little bit and expanding hours at a minimum. That's service span. A lot of the service operates in a very narrow peak window today. We'd like to add that some of the services may operate all day in both direction in this concept, similar to Sound Transit's regional express routes like the Everett to Seattle 512. That would be a big change over how we operate the service today. Connections to light rail can be primarily made in Linwood, with a few new peak connections to Bellevue based on travel market data. New service options like microtransit are an important component of our evolving 2024 plan. I like to note that that includes a continuum of different things, not just vans or cutaway bus vehicles, but could mean shared vans, TNC partnerships, lots of different things, lots of mobility options. The bottom line is it's very flexible and fills gaps in the network, some of which may not be able to be accessible via a fixed route bus due to scale or size. What's changed from the past, instead of relying on a telephone call, sometimes 411, to a physical dispatcher, it is accessed and tracked using modern technology like smartphones. The new Linwood pilot will be CT's real-world test of this new service option. So going into the active outreach phase of this overall effort, what are the key questions we want to pose to the public? There's quite a few of them here on this slide, but much of this is kind of a synthesis, I would say, of major trends, patterns that have arisen over the last year. Examples of them include new emerging travel patterns, whether it's the downtown Bellevue example I mentioned earlier, Cascade Industrial Center, the desires to commute outside the traditional peak commute windows for work trips, extended service frequency at night, having local bus service that runs after 9 o'clock at night, 11 or midnight as an example. Higher frequency weekday service and also weekend service. And another thing we hear a lot of course, is micro transits or more on-demand service, like you heard in an earlier comment today, as well as the travel needs of equity populations, which are highly concentrated kind of north-south between Linwood and Everett in our PTBA. So 2024 restructure, there's sort of a to-do list or report card that we would use for something like this. It helps encapsulate all the previous points made in the presentation today, but in summary, easy connections to Lincoln Swift, improve access to jobs in a lot of these high growth regional centers in the whole Puget Sound region. Reduced waiting time and walking distance, more midday, evening, and weekend trips, and better access for underserved groups and areas. So with this overall rebooting of the network and realigning our services to the light rail extension to Linwood, we're also rebooting a lot of our outreach. And we'll be taking lots of input and working directly with community-based organizations or CBOs. We want to reach populations that we've not reached very well in the past, and we'll be translating our materials into our 5 Title VI languages, which are English, Spanish, Chinese, Russian, and Korean. My last slides here is the overall project schedule. Here we are today at the board meeting on September 2nd. We'll be going into partner and agency outreach and setting up meetings, whether they're with transit agencies or community development, public works departments at various cities, to give them a broad overview of what you've seen here today, and maybe start some initial discussion on some coordination and infrastructure and land use coordination issues. A lot of the this will then transition immediately into external outreach. That's full public outreach, taking comments from the public And in 2022, there'll be a lot more of that, but we'll have a lot more details to show and share with the public, looking at where buses go, specific routing, stops, alignments, things like that. That takes us into 2023 as a large year where we have to, after the targeted adoption, do a lot of implementation, training, hiring, scheduling. And the assumption right now is is a Lidwood Link light rail opening in mid 2024, but to be ready as early as March 2024 for all of our resources getting lined up, I mentioned. So that concludes my presentation today, and I'd like to open up for any questions or comments.
Thank you, Thomas. Is there any questions from the board for Thomas in his presentation?
Yes, Kim, I have one.
Go ahead.
At community or at Puget Sound Regional Council, equity is a huge issue with Vision 2050, with project selection that I'm on and the Transit Caucus. I mean, it's going to be making a difference. And so I guess and I heard you mention it several times. And so I'm just curious, is there a place you're getting information on Snohomish County that would tell you where those neighborhoods are and where we need to be making sure that we're running routes and things?
That's a good question. Right now, primarily what we use is the 2017 census data that's being updated this fall. So we'll be updating that. We also have a onboard customer survey that will be updated later this year. They'll be used in tandem with that. And a lot of our, and analysis tools take that as its primary input, and we can do a lot of analysis. We can draw heat maps that kind of really zoom in to where that is located. And then on the outreach side, we're going to be going directly to a lot of these community-based organizations and really targeting those populations a little bit more tactically than we've done in the past, to get even more anecdotal and firsthand knowledge of some of the more local issues.
Okay, thank you. I know that they are, actually, I'm a little concerned that they're pushing all the way to the end on equity instead of taking some steps. And we have not made any decisions yet. We're still meeting and will be until the end of the year, but it's a real concern of mine. But thank you. I appreciate your information.
Okay, thank you. Is there any other questions from the board? All right, seeing none, we will continue on with the rest of the agenda. Next up is the Chief Executive Officer's report. Rick, you're on. 3 minutes.
Thanks again, Mr. Chair. See if I can make 3 minutes this time. He said, tongue in cheek. Seriously though, we have presented a lot of information to the board today, so I will try to be a little lighter on my report. Quick look at the operational front. Ridership continues to tick up modestly in the fixed route network, and we continue to see more significant gains in our commuter service. So that's positive, if incremental. I would note that, and I think most of you are aware that TSA extended the federal mask mandate that had been set to expire next week, now into January, in light of what's going on. And that, of course, crosses all transportation sectors. So we'll continue to enforce the federal mandate on board. In terms of COVID on the employee front, it troubles me to report that we've now seen 9 new cases in August and 2 already this week in September. So that's 11 cases within 30 days. And that's more than we had in any 30-day period since the pandemic started. So that's troubling. Positive note is that, based on our contact tracing efforts, none of these cases appear to have a linkage to the workplace. But it is mirroring the pattern that we're seeing countywide. I've been on regular calls, including yesterday, with our regional peers monitoring the situation, and our peer agencies in King and Pierce and Kitsap counties are seeing similar patterns throughout their service territory. So it's not just us, and obviously it's a troubling trend. Vaccinations continue to be a high priority for us. We continue to educate our employees on that as aggressively and constructively as we can with our incentive program in place. We're still hovering just above 65% as a cohort. So we're thinking about all the things we could do to increase that number. Vaccine mandates are appearing all around us amongst state and regional transportation peers. Some are providing a testing alternative, others are not. I am looking at all the options right now, and I haven't made any decisions yet. But it's pretty clear, and I'm sure it is to you as leaders in your own jurisdictions, we're not where we thought we would be on COVID, thinking back to a couple of months ago. And my primary concern continues to be the safety and welfare of our employees, their families, and our customers. So I will keep you posted as we continue to monitor the situation. On a related note, we are at the county's request reopening the Ashway Park and Ride facility to provide vaccination and testing on site. This is something we had done earlier with the Snohomish Health District, and they've identified a need to resume operations at Ashway, so we are accommodating that. We'll be kicking that off tomorrow, as a matter of fact. So departing from the topic of the pandemic, I wanted to thank the staff for everything they're doing to get ready for the service change and the Northgate opening October 2nd. As Luke was talking, he indicated activities that are underway the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th. And I would just note that October 4th is Community Transit's anniversary, our 45th anniversary. So a milestone of sorts for public transit in Snohomish County. And we will be out there in force that whole weekend and into the week, monitoring, working with our customers to celebrate our anniversary, and also to highlight the new opportunities that are available to riders. So I'll just put it out there for any of you, if you're interested in coming out and trying out the service and taking a look at how we're beginning the practice of transit integration, bus rail integration, just let us know, and we'll work with you to plan that out. On the intergovernmental front, our federal partners have been busy. You've all heard about the Senate infrastructure package that passed. The Congress adopted a budget resolution last week that provides instructions to develop a much more ambitious reconciliation package that would become a vehicle for enacting an infrastructure package. Lots of moving parts in the House and Senate, but it's creating some interest here in our state about what the state might do to step up and match what the feds are doing. We're watching very closely. Obviously, the federal investment could mean a significant source of assistance for us as we look at our fleet composition and as we look at continuing with our plans to expand our BRT network. At the state level, we met yesterday or day before yesterday with the governor's transportation staff. Had an opportunity to chat with them about what they see coming. There's still a lot of talk and speculation about the possibility of a special session in Olympia to address transportation revenues. And I think the federal activity is adding some momentum to that. So nothing confirmed yet, but we will obviously watch that very closely and be prepared to engage if it happens. We're in the process of developing our 2022 legislative agenda, and we'll bring that forward for review by the board next month. At the regional level, we've had a couple of meetings at the GM level regarding the distribution of the ARPA, the American Recovery Act funding. And I'm pleased to report we had a productive pair of meetings day before yesterday in which we agreed we would use the same basic approach to distributing the ARPA funds that we used to distribute the CRISA funds. So that's a positive development for community transit, for Everett Transit, and for our partners at Sound Transit. It keeps in place the earn share formula and provides a modest equity distribution in light of the extraordinary circumstances presented by the pandemic. So I believe that the PSRC staff will now be bringing that forward for action directly to the exec board. But we'll brief council members Daughtry and Schweddy in more detail on that next week, as the policy board will also be meeting. Locally, on the Everett Transit front, I want to report that we've had another productive meeting with our counterparts at the city of Everett. Again, at the request of the council, we've got a small group of senior staff working together to develop some ideas on a joint planning framework that would give us the structure in which to develop some ideas for integrating our operations. So our goal is to have something back to you and to the council later in the year to consider. In that regard, from a process standpoint, I would characterize the discussions as positive, collegial, and energetic. So more to come on that. Last but not least, I wanted to report out again that we had a couple of really exciting tours of our construction of the new Casino Road Administration Building a week before last. A number of you were able to attend and get a look at the progress that's happening. It's going to be a very impressive facility and a great space for collaborating on transit. And we're just super excited about it. It's an ambitious project. It's trending on scope, schedule, and budget. And it is that necessary first step to accommodate the expansion of the Merrill Creek operating base on which we broke ground here a couple of weeks back. So I want to thank board members for turning out and taking a look at how that work's going. And Mr. Chair, that concludes my report.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Okay, we'll move on to committee reports, starting off with the executive committee. We met on Thursday, August 19th. Councilmember Schweddy, Councilmember Marine, and Mayor Naring and I attended. We had an executive session held for labor negotiations. The CEO provided his report. Employee vaccinations were discussed. A briefing on the status of the Everett Transit Community Transit joint study was reviewed, such as what he told us just now. And the committee was provided a status of the Swift Orange Line property acquisitions, which we also discussed earlier today. The next executive committee meeting is scheduled for September 16th at 11:30 a.m. Next will be the Finance Performance Oversight Committee, Councilmember Schweddy.
Okay, thank you. The Finance Performance and Oversight Committee met on September the 2nd, 2021. We met via Zoom in the Community Transit's Planning Conference Room. Director of Administration Jerry Beardsley, agent staff, and board member Sid Roberts and I attended. On the consent agenda is approval of July 2021 expenditures and payroll items C through H. Second quarter 2021 financial report, unaudited. Operating revenues were at 46.6% of budget. Operating expenditures were at 46.1% of budget, with all categories coming in under budget. Sales tax revenue exceeded expectations at 62.6% of budget. A copy of this report is included in your board packet. Sales tax report for July 2021. In July 2021, community transit collected approximately 15.6 million in sales tax revenue, approximately 4 million more than budgeted. July sales tax collections reflected purchases made in May. A copy of this report is included in your board packet. Diesel fuel report for July. Year-to-date through July 2021, community transit paid an average of $2.09 per gallon for diesel fuel, compared to the 2021 amended budget amount of $2.07 per gallon. The budget team continues to closely monitor fuel costs. The next Finance and Performance Oversight Committee meeting is scheduled at 2 p.m. Thursday, September 16, 2021 via Zoom. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Schwetti. Next, we'll hear from Strategic Alignment and Capital Development Committee, Councilmember Marine.
Thank you, Chair. The Strategic Alignment and Capital Development Committee meeting was held remotely over Zoom on Wednesday, August the 18th at 2 o'clock. In the meeting was attended by myself, Councilmember Tom Merrill, Labor Representative Lance Norton, and Councilmember Stephanie Wright. The committee reviewed and forwarded 2 items for action on today's agenda. ITB number 2021-055 was the purchase of the replacement paratransit buses, and resolution number 0621 adopting the 2021 through 2026 TDB plan. The committee heard and forwarded 2 informational items presented to the board earlier in today's meeting: a baseline service level Title VI analysis in the March 2022 service, and the 2024 network planning update. As you can see, most of the really awesome items on today's meeting came from our committee. There were no consent items for today's board agenda, and a brief update was provided on today's scheduled public hearings for the Swift Orange Line BRT project. The next meeting of the Strategic Alignment and Capital Development Committee is Wednesday, September the 15th at 2 p.m. and it will also be remote. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councilmember Marine, and thank you for doing such a wonderful job in getting the best stuff out from your committee. It's really commendable. All right. Okay, next is the consent agenda. I would entertain a motion on the consent agenda.
I'll move approval.
Okay, second.
Okay, it's been first and seconded. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none and seeing none, I will ask for a vote. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstain? Passed unanimously. Thank you. Next, we'll have 2 action items. The first is award ITB number 2021-055, purchase of replacement paratransit buses. Director Behe.
I just wanted to take a brief moment. This is, as was just mentioned in the committee report, this is part of our regular fleet replacement activity for maintenance of state of good repair. It's also a component of the transit development plan that you'll have an opportunity to act on in the next agenda item. I just wanted to introduce Mike Suela, who will be speaking to this particular action item. Mike is in our maintenance department and was recently promoted to Deputy Director of Maintenance, and we're really happy to have him in that position. I don't think he's had an opportunity prior to this to speak with the board, so happy to introduce Mike, and he'll be presenting the action item.
Thanks, Roland. Good afternoon, board members. Before you is a request for the purchase of 13 paratransit buses to replace the 2016 model year ones that we're currently operating. When they're replaced, they'll be over 6 years old and have about 170,000 miles on them. This is part of the planned vehicle replacement for 2021 and our multi-year capital investment schedule. And we propose the purchase of these 13. They will be 14 passenger models, gasoline fueled paratransit buses. They'll be made using the Washington State Vehicle Contract number 06719 with Creative Bus Sales out of Mukilteo. In 2021, the board of directors had adopted the budget for capital project number 2108, and this does include sufficient funds for the purchase of these 13 vehicles. So with that, we request that the board of directors authorizes the chief executive officer to negotiate and purchase the 13 paratransit buses using Washington State contract number 06719 with Creative Bus Sales. This purchase will include contingency, equipment changes, licenses and fees, and is not to exceed the amount of $1,390,237. Thank you for your time today, and I'd be happy to try to answer any questions.
Okay, board, do you have any questions for Mr. Swela? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion.
Chair, I would
Yes.
recommend that the Board of Directors authorize the Chief Executive Officer to negotiate and purchase 13 paratransit buses using state vehicle contract number 06719. Oh, and we just lost it. And all of the rest of the stuff that was on there. Eric, I'm sure the slide was coming back.
Second.
Yeah, there we go.
It's in your packet, if that helps.
Yeah, well, then I'd have to dig for that. Let's see here. Oh, I'm sure I can find it here eventually.
Here it comes.
There we go. Yeah, I was talking about state vehicle contract number 06719, ITB number 2021-055 with Creative Bus Sales. The purchase will include contingency equipment changes, license and fees not to exceed the amount of $1,390,237, as was also presented by Mike.
Second.
Okay, we have a first and second. Any comments, discussion on the motion? Hearing none, I will take a vote. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Passed unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Swela, and congratulations on your promotion.
Thank you.
Next on the action items list is approved resolution number 06-21, adopting the 2021 to 2026 Transit Development Plan. Mr. Behe.
Yeah, thanks again. So I just want to introduce Sabina Araya, who's our manager of long range planning, and Sabina will speak to this item. Before Sabina gets to it, I really wanted to highlight two items. One is that that this plan is always an agency-wide effort, and I just want to recognize Sabina and Thomas and the team that have contributed to this, and all of the various parts of the agency to support development of this, what effectively amounts to a 6-year financially constrained business plan for the agency. It's always a big effort, and we always get great participation throughout the agency. The final thing I'll say is I just want to note that for the presentations you've seen so far today, I think it's safe to say this is the largest 6-year transit development plan that the agency has ever adopted in terms of the scope of services, the amount of service, the scale of the capital programs that it contains, and also the transition that it marks in terms of in this 6-year period, we will connect twice to light rail. We will build out major facility upgrades, expand our SWIFT network, and begin exploring new modes of service. So lots of exciting change underway within this planning scope, and I'll hand it off to Sabina to describe the process we've undertaken.
Thank you, Roland, and good afternoon. Thank you for your time today on a very full agenda. This is the last touch point for this year's transit development plan, bringing you the comments we received during the public comment period and requesting your adoption of the final plan. As you recall, the TDP, as we affectionately call it, is a state requirement, and we update it every year and submit it to the Washington State Department of Transportation. The plan outlines our activities and achievements over the last year, and then it provides a roadmap for services and capital investments for the following years, in this case, 2021 through 2026. Our annual process starts somewhere in March, and it concludes about August, September, typically. We incorporate financial updates, business planning, and service assumptions into the plan, bring you an initial draft for review and for public comment. And then the updated final draft is what we have in your packets today for adoption. A little bit of an overview of our process. We presented the draft plan at your July 1st meeting, and that's where we kicked off our public outreach. We had a number of notices for the meetings, both in the media, in the paper, on social media, via emails to our local jurisdictions and partners, in our monthly newsletter, The Route Ahead. And we've had some media mentions that picked up on the press release. So overall, that all culminated with the public hearing on August 5th, last month's meeting. In terms of the comments we received, there were a total of 6 from both the jurisdictions and partners, and from the public. You have copies of the comments themselves in your packets today. Some highlights of those from our partners in jurisdictions. We've heard from Everett Transit, wanting to highlight the partnership and the continued effort, especially in the last year with Rethink Everett, Rethink Transit in Everett, excuse me. The City of Shoreline wanted to highlight our coordination on our BRT alignment for the Blue Line. And City of Mukilteo provided a letter highlighting their desire to have more service serving Mukilteo, especially with the 2024 service plan. And also coordination on projects. And they also highlighted their newly formed Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee for the city that our communications department is going to work with and reach out to. So great projects. From the public, we've heard from customers that would like more connections to light rail, especially from Edmonds. There was a request for service on Meadow Road, which we had planned for a couple of years ago, but we dropped those with COVID coming on board. And that's in the Martha Lake area. He was supportive of other service options in that area if they will be available. And we had comments about support for mobility options for our various communities, Mukilteo to Seaway Transit Center connections, mentioning again the unification with Everett Transit, that potential project, and updates to the website to increase public participation. In terms of what you see in the final draft, that we've been able to incorporate from the draft you saw back in July. We've included more details on our coordination with the City of Everett. We've provided a summary of the public comments we received, and we've synchronized our plan with the 2022 budget development. It is a kind of a point in time approach. So as we get more updates, then we're able to update our financial information. And most of that you'll see pertaining to the federal funding distribution, which we have more details now, an updated fair revenue forecast, operating expenses, and fund and reserve balances. So we're truing that up with the budget in 2022, which you'll see later this year, and wanting to make sure that they agree. So we reflect the latest. And with that, our request is to adopt the final draft of the 2021-2026 TDP so that we can provide it to the state and submit it as our plan. And I'll take any questions.
Thank you, Sabina. Does the board have any questions for Sabina? Boy, we got a tough crowd today. Holy cow. Wow.
All right. Well, Mr. Chair, even if they take that off the screen, I have it pulled up now, but I move that we approve resolution number 621, adopting the final draft 2021-2026 transit development plan.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Are there any discussions about the motion? Hearing and seeing none, I would entertain a vote. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Passed unanimously. We now have a TDP all the way to 2026.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sabina.
Thank you.
You did a wonderful job. Okay, we have chair's report next. I really don't have much to say. I look forward to seeing everything on October 1st and 2nd down there in Link Right Rail. I can't wait for that to get started, see how we do. We do have an upcoming meeting. Audit exit conference is scheduled for Tuesday, September 21st from 11 to 12, and all board members are invited to attend that. It will be a remote meeting and will be public noticed. We'll be getting information to your emails soon on that. The next regular board meeting is scheduled for October 7th at 3 p.m. And with that, we go to board communications. I'm going to start with Council Member Marine.
I have nothing at this time, but thank you. Oh, other than I will say that it was really really cool to go on the tour of the new building and to see how far they've come. And we had seen artist rendering of it, and it's darn if they're not matching it. It's looking good. So everybody will have an opportunity soon, I'm sure.
Thank you, Council Member Merrill.
Just this, I'm pleased to report that the voters approved the renewal of the City of Snohomish Transportation Benefit District in the last election. We're quite pleased to see that. Thank you.
Great. Mayor John Naring.
No report today. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Mr. Norton.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to join Joe Marine in thanking Roland was there and was the facility was just fantastic. Oh my God, the design, interior, and all of that. Tom Merrill, Sid Roberts, and myself had the pleasure on Friday, August 20th, and also our very helpful ladies that came, Rachel and I forget the other two's names, but they were great. But the facility is just amazing, and I think we were all very impressed. And thanks very much for those that took us on that tour. That's all.
Thank you, Mr. Norton. Councilmember Roberts.
Well, I'll just echo that as well. I too enjoyed the tour. Wonderful building, and I think that one of my most enjoyable parts of it was walking through there with Lance and getting to hear his commentary on everything. And we all enjoyed each other, and I agree with him that the tour guides were excellent. So it's just a fun building. I can't wait till it's done. And thanks for putting that together and taking us through.
Thank you, Councilmember Schweddy.
Okay, yeah, I do have a couple of things. I know that I have briefed the board on the massive construction of manufacturing in Arlington. I'd like to update some. I went on a tour recently of the new factory that is building electric airplanes. Super impressive. They wouldn't allow me to take any photos, otherwise I would have posted them a while ago. But they are already talking expansion. They are already leasing land to build and double what they're doing. And just recently, Vashon Aircraft is moving from Woodinville and Everett to the Arlington Airport. They're going to start in a building that is already constructed, but they are going to be leasing and building a building on the west side of the airport that will double their business. I know that I mentioned last time that with the growth that we were expecting 10,000 jobs in the next 3 years. And I have to tell you that that number has been increasing, I would say almost 100 a day. There is nowhere that you cannot find manufacturing businesses going in. Smart Cap, who have one building done and another one that was going to employ 600 people, are now requesting leasing land for 7 more. And I mention all this because, yes, we have the Manufacturing Industrial Center, but as far as buildable land for homes, we only have 34 acres left. So that means that all of the cities surrounding us and north and south, the whole Snohomish County is going to be growing. And with that many jobs coming in and that numbers increasing on a daily basis, everyone needs to start looking at how you're going to be able to house all of these people with the new jobs. Anyway, that's what I had. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mayor Smith.
Just the pre-apprentice program that Sound Transit and Edmonds College and Everett College and Community Transit are partnering on is kicking off recruitment this summer with the first cohort starting in fall. And so you'll be seeing some marketing flyers going out pretty soon, but we're working on recruiting a diverse cohort and people who want to participate in this pre-apprentice program. And no tuition is going to be charged because we have so many great sponsors. So really excited that that is going to happen in our community. And I just wanted to thank Community Transit for your partnership with that. Thank you.
Thank you. Just to piggyback on what Councilmember Shorty said, yeah, the buildable lands in Lake Stevens is almost done. We only have, I think, 15 acres left, and then a little bit of infill. Most of our land for buildable lands is constrained by wetlands, so there's not really much they can do. So it looks like we're going to look like Linwood here pretty soon. We're going to start going up. The other thing that we've talked to Community Transit, both Jan Schweddy and I have talked to Community Transit about needing transportation from places like Lake Stevens or Granite Falls, Snohomish, that's going to house quite a few of those people that are working up there. And Highway 9, if most of you maybe haven't seen that, is only one lane from Lake Stevens all the way up. And that's going to be a problem. So I know that Community Transit's already working on something there. We've talked about it before, and I look forward to seeing what's going on with that. And with that, there is no executive session. Is that correct?
That's correct. No executive session.
Thank you, Mr. Hendricks. So with that, I would entertain a motion. No, first we need to say, is there any other business to be brought before the board? I almost got off my script again. Seeing none, I would ask for a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed, forget it. And we are adjourned. Thank you very much for your attendance.
everyone.
We'll see you all later. John, I need to give you a call.
All right.